So first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for being here. I know this isn't the best time. I know it might be right at your lunch hour. So if some of you are eating while you're doing this, that's perfectly fine. I understand. I just scarfed down my lunch real quick. Um, and come and go as you please here today. This is going to be, relatively informal. Because it's virtual, it's not going to be super interactive. It's tough to make these virtual ones, really interactive. But certainly, we don't expect a huge crowd. So if you have questions as we're going, just stop and either put it in the chat or raise your hand or potentially even unmute yourself because we don't have that many people, and feel free to ask. Because I'm going to go through so how it's going to look here is we're doing two separate presentations. We're going to stay on the same meet and they're going to seem like it's the same thing, but in essence, we're doing, a teacher personal finance session for you, two back-to-back teacher personal finance sessions for you. So the first hour is going to be me, and I'm going to talk about the Florida Retirement System, FRS. I'm going to talk about both the pension plan and the investment plan for the FRS. They are fundamentally different plans, and that's, I find many people don't always understand the difference between them. So we are going to talk about that. And then the second half of the presentation from 1 to 2, we've got really two phenomenal speakers joining us. It's Dan Otter, he runs a nonprofit called 403bwise.org, whose mission is to improve the 403b for teachers. And so they do a lot of advocacy. They do a lot of education around 403b retirement plans, of which you as an employee of the Scotia Palm Beach County have access to, and you may currently have one or may be thinking about getting one. And then joining Dan in that second half of the presentation will be Scott Dauenhauer, who is a certified financial planner. He's a professional. He's a CFP, and so he helps run the nonprofit. I can 100% guarantee you, nobody on this call sells products. Nobody on this call is going to try to get you to be a client on anything. That is an unequivocal promise, and that's not always true. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. But like I said, I'm going to lead it off here with just sort of, and I'm just going to give, it's just an hour. So this is a pretty quick overview of the FRS, and it's going to be, just a high level overview. I am not an FRS professional by any stretch of the imagination. What I do, for those who don't know me, I am the financial literacy program planner for the district. Typically, what I do is I help prepare teachers to teach their students. We have required standards at the high school level. We have a newly required financial literacy course this year, but we've been teaching it for many years. This is actually my 10th year in this position. So we've been teaching various personal finance programs at various levels for close to 10 years now. And I do it from kindergarten. We actually have kindergarten financial literacy programs, which is really cool. It's so cool going into kindergarten classrooms and doing this. All the way, we have a middle school elective course, which is relatively new, which we're really starting to build a lot. And then obviously I give a lot of support for the high school courses. We have the required course starting this year. It's still somewhat done in economics courses, so we support that as well. And there's a myriad of other personal finance program we do throughout the district as well to try to get our students ready. But one thing I very quickly learned when doing this job is that many times our teachers were struggling getting their students prepared for the personal finance world that awaits them because they themselves were struggling. And so a lot of times when I did professional development sessions that were just on some sort of student program to help the teachers implement it, teachers would stay after and start asking me questions. And the questions rarely had to do with the standards or the curriculum. They often had to do with some personal question of their own personal finance. And it was no different. This is my 23rd year in education. I was a young teacher who made a lot of financial mistakes. I did not get any personal finance education at all. Through elementary, middle, high school, college, from my parents, I made a lot of really bad financial mistakes as a young teacher. And that was what set me on the course of eventually learning a lot more about personal finance. I eventually went and got my master's in economics, and really, once I started hearing the stories from other teachers of when I first started this job, is when I became, this is really, even though what I'm doing today is not really part of my job description. It's just something we've kind of made part of my job description because it's something I see there's such a tremendous need for. And my dog in this game is that I know that if we can get our teachers more comfortable in their own personal finances, then they may be more willing and more comfortable to teach it to the students. While I fully understand that there's many of you on this call who may never have to teach this to students, and that's okay. As I tell a story a lot, my life, I've been surrounded by educators. My mom worked in schools my whole life. Married to a teacher here in the district. I was in the classroom for 13 years before this job. A lot of my best friends are teachers. So I get very passionate about this because a lot of these I see a lot of my good friends and good colleagues who, for lack of a better term, are kind of lost. And I saw really we're not only making, some questionable financial decisions, but we're what I felt getting taken advantage of. And so that's where I get really fired up with this. The latter half, I'll answer that in a moment, Tina. Thanks for the question. The latter half of this presentation is the part I really get fired up about. And that's when it comes to these 403B retirement plans, because largely, and this is not a school district of Palm Beach County problem, this is a national problem. They're largely unregulated, and most of the products that are offered in them are very poor. And they're being sold by salespeople who are being welcomed with open arms on the school campuses, and selling really, really substandard products. And it really gets me fired up when I see and hear some of these stories. So that's sort of my dog in this game. That's why I get fired up about this, and that's why I've just kind of taken this on and try to do as much of this as possible. Tina, great question. If you didn't see Tina's question, she asked, what certifications needed to teach the personal finance course in high school? Depends on which course. So there's 5 different courses right now that can be used. Primarily, there's 3 certifications. So the main course is now called Personal Finance and Money Management. That's the main course that's being used. And that can be taught by secondary social studies certification, secondary math certification, or secondary business certification. It allows for all 3 certifications. And then there's one other CTE course that can be used, and that's only, that course is pretty rare, but that's only a CTE certification. So if that's something, certainly if anybody on this call gets as fired up about this as I do, and you want to teach this to students, yeah, talk to me. This is what I do all day, every day, is help support these courses. I can certainly help get you set up, because a lot of these schools, whether they realize it or not, they realize it, are going to have to significantly increase the amount of personal finance sections that they're offering in their schools, and they're going to need teachers, right? All right, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. That's what I usually talk about. Let's talk about the FRS. We're not going to do the welcoming ritual because we're here virtually, but what I usually do for the welcome ritual for the FRS is I ask people, do you know which plan you're in, right? Do you know whether you're in, or first of all, I guess, do you even know there's 2 different plans? And then do you know which plan you're in, right? So you've got the investment plan and the pension plan. So think to yourself, right, whether you know and can tell yourself which plan that you're in. Because if you didn't hear me say it at the very beginning, these are fundamentally different plans, right? They are a little bit similar, just in the fact that, you have some money automatically deducted from your paycheck and put into it. Outside of that, they're fundamentally different, and they operate fundamentally different. And when you retire, they will pay you fundamentally differently. So it's incredibly important that you know which plan. I'll repeat it for those who are here at the beginning. I am not a financial professional. I'm not an FRS professional. I'm not here to tell you which plan to be in. All right. You got to decide that for yourself, because there are benefits and drawbacks to both of them. All right. But this is going to be strictly educational, just to sort of give you the knowledge, and you can sort of decide for yourself from there. And there's my disclaimer. See, I gave you my disclaimer before I even put it up there. Just the fact that, I'm not a CFP, I'm not a financial professional, I'm an educator. I'm certainly not guaranteeing that you can make money. But number three, most importantly, I'm not paid by any, and this will be the same with the true for the next presentation. None of us that are going to appear here are paid by any of the companies or anything we're talking about. There's no commissions or anything like that. And that's, again, where I get fired up about this, is that so many of the education presentations that are out there offered through our district, the people who are presenting them make money off of what they, I mean, there's a huge conflict of interest. They're almost always commission-based salespeople. So they're a little compromised. Whatever they're talking about is something that they can sell you to make money off of. I can 100% guarantee you that nobody that is speaking today is making any commission, can make any sort of money off anything that's going to be talked about here. And we're going to try to give it to you strictly from an educational perspective. So here's where we start all of our presentations, and this is going to set up our second presentation too. This is going to set up both presentations today. This is sort of an old-fashioned way of looking at your finances, but it's still true today. And another thing we sometimes do with our opener, which we don't do virtually, is, have you ever thought about what money are you going to live off of when you retire? And I mean that. Right? How are you going to live when you retire? For some of you, it may be closer than others. And I don't care if you're 5 years away or if you're 25 years away. This is something you need to think about, is what money am I going to live off of when I retire? And there's this three-legged stool that most financial professors have long talked about that you should be living off of, that you should be planned to live off of in retirement. And by the way, that's my other big goal in doing these presentations, is I want you to realize that as an educator, as a teacher, for some of you lifelong, career long, for others not, but either way, I want you to leave these presentations with the confidence that you can retire comfortably as an educator. Absolutely, 100% can retire comfortably as an educator. I hear sometimes, like, oh, I'm a teacher. I'm like, I've been destined to a life of poverty. I'm never going to have money. I'm never going to be able to retire. That's not true, right? There are ways, relatively simple ways as an educator, because we have some good benefits at our disposal, that you can retire comfortably. Now, I don't say retire rich, right? In our second presentation, Dan Otter, he actually wrote a book a long time ago that is designed for teachers, that was titled something to the effect of Teach and Retire Rich. Rich is subjective, right? It's different for everybody, but certainly you can teach and retire comfortably, which is also subjective, but hopefully by what you consider comfortably. And these are the three legs of a stool that you should be resting on in retirement. And so let's look at those real quick. And we're obviously going to talk about two of these today. The one we're not going to talk about is this first one. The first one you see in the lower right-hand corner, which is paid by the government. That's Social Security. You will receive Social Security. Right? We're lucky, but teachers in 15 states don't get Social Security. Now they don't pay into it, so maybe their checks are a little bit larger because they're not getting taken out of their paycheck, but they don't have that to fall back on in retirement. You will. Now, if you don't know, Social Security considers a full working lifetime to be 35 years. So they take your highest 35 years and they average that out, and then they have a formula based on what your lifetime benefit will be. The second half of this presentation goes into that. I don't think in just an hour, I'm not really going to get to talk much about Social Security, but just so you know, that is what Social Security is. So if you work a full 35 years, now you can work less and still get a benefit. It'll be less, obviously, but it should replace about 30% of your pre-retirement income. All right, so again, this is something I asked you at the beginning. Have you thought about what money you're going to retire on? Have you thought about how much money you need to retire with? Right? Most people haven't sat down and actually calculated, like, how much money do I actually need in retirement? Right? Is it the same as you need today? Is it going to be less? Are you going to have less expenses? For everybody, that's a different answer. But Social Security in and of itself, you're looking at about replace roughly 30-ish% of your pre-retirement income. So you've got that leg solid, right? That leg right in the middle. The leg on the left, that's pension. We are incredibly fortunate as teachers, incredibly fortunate. A vast majority of the country no longer has access to a pension. We still do, right? And it's guaranteed. Now, some of you may not have a pension, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. If you're in the investment plan, technically that's not a pension, but that's just semantics for right now. You're still going to get something from the FRS. So this third leg that you see titled pension, that has been absolutely whittled away for most people, not for us. All right, so that's the second leg. Now that if you work a full 30 years, right, or if you work a full 30 years or work to age 62, it's going to replace about 48% of your pre-retirement income. Not bad. Now, obviously, it's going to be less if you work less than the 30 years, and it's going to be more if you work more than the 30 years. So right there already, you're looking at, if you're a full career 30 to 35 year teacher, that's going to replace roughly 65 to 70% of your pre-retirement income, right? And the lower that goes, the less you've worked, obviously. That's not bad. But then ask yourself, well, do I want to only live off 65 to 70% of my pre-retirement income? Or in your mind, did you imagine living off of more than that? Did you imagine having a more luxurious, or maybe I'll just say comfortable, retirement? And that's where the third leg comes into play. And that is the one that's paid by you, right? So you've got two nice legs to settle on in retirement. You've got the one paid by the government, Social Security. You've got the one paid by your employer, FRS. It's that third leg, and that's what the second part of the presentation is going to be about, that many people are lacking. And that is, what have you done outside of FRS, outside of Social Security, to save for retirement? Because if you want more than 60 to 70% of your pre-retirement income, you need to save some on your own as well. And preferably, it's in the form of tax advantaged accounts. So we're talking, for us as educators, it's either a 403B or a 457B. Again, second part of the presentation, that's what we're going to cover. You could also have an IRA, an individual retirement account. Those are done by anybody. That's a tax advantage account you can open on your own with any vendor of your choosing, or a Roth IRA. They'll talk a little bit about what that difference is in the second presentation. You could have some personal savings account, or maybe a brokerage account is what we call those. Those are taxable though. They don't have the tax advantage that these other retirement accounts do. So you may have some of your own investments somewhere put aside in the taxable brokerage accounts, and your spouse may have some assets, right? Maybe they work in the private sector and have a 401k. That could be it. Maybe they have their own IRA. Maybe they have their own savings. So that's that third leg. So the second part of the presentation, we're going to focus hard on that third leg. But for the remaining part that we have here in this first part, we're going to focus on the FRS leg, the pension leg. So first and foremost, before I go any further in talking about FRS, I always show this first, because if I say nothing else, I want you to take this away. And that's that. Remember the first part of the presentation, I went on and how I said that most of the education presentations you see are done by people who are compensated, who are earning a commission, with one exception. That one exception is the ones done by FRS. All right, the presentations done by FRS, they actually contract with a company called EY, Ernst & Young. EY is an accounting firm. They don't sell investments. They're not an insurance company that sells insurance products. They're simply hired to give advice, free for anybody who's an FRS member. So use it. You can ask questions specifically about the FRS. They are the FRS professionals. They are the only ones you should be really going to and asking official FRS questions. But they also answer any financial questions you may have. So there's the phone number there for you. They also have an advisor service that is kind of like a robo-advisor service that they offer for free, that you can go in and join that robo-advisor service for free. And then they also do a lot of workshops. In our district, they typically do a workshop every few months. So I know that typically gets emailed out. Again, I would ignore almost any financial workshop you see through the district, with this one exception. If you see ones that are offered directly from FRS, specifically it would be EY, because that's who FRS contracts with. Those are really top-notch, really good information. And they also have a bunch of recorded ones. So I put the link there. When you get this presentation, you can click on that and check out some of those recorded workshops. So there's one more big reason I'd like to talk to teachers about the pension, and especially before we do the second part of the presentation. Now, the obvious one is because it's part of your three-legged stool in retirement. But the other reason is this. Now, I think you know what that is. Anybody want to put in the chat what that's a picture of? Thank you, Ashley. Yes, that absolutely is the Trojan horse. So I think we're probably all familiar with the Trojan horse. I don't have to do a history lesson on what the Trojan horse is. But that's oftentimes what a lot of these commission-based salespeople use to get their foot in the door, either with you or with a school, is they use pension education as the Trojan horse to get your attention, to get a school's attention, to then sell you these expensive commission-based products. So that's why I like to talk a lot about your pension, is so that you don't fall prey to these Trojan horse techniques that, oh, hey, we're going to come in and give you pension education. Well, no, they're primarily insurance salespeople. So tell me what an insurance person is doing, giving professional talks about your FRS benefits. They shouldn't be. They're not FRS professionals. They're just doing it because they know a little bit more than you do, and they know that they know a little bit more than you do. And so that's how they're going to get you in the door, talk to you like for 5 minutes about the FRS, and then spend the rest of the time pitching you these commission-based products, because they'll tell you have to have these products because your FRS benefits fall short. That's what every single pitch is. We just had a question by Tina. Can EY help calculate which plan to go with and when it's a good time? Yes, 100% they can do that. Yep, that is what they're there for. All right, they can run all those numbers, and they'll give you the numbers too, and let you make your own decision on that. So here's part of these Trojan horse techniques. I'll just kind of fly through these, but I want to note one thing. Every single email I'm going to show you right here has all been sent to me as a district employee. Not a single one of them is from the school district. They often make it seem like they are. Right? Not a single one of them is from the Florida retirement system. They all make it seem like they are. 100% of these emails I'm going to show you are from commission-based salespeople. Right? So here's one I just got relatively recently. They got clever titles, I got to be honest. Don't be tardy to the retirement planning party. Fancy. All right, this is by a company that is, and look at even it says, make sure you're ready for FRS retirement. We invite you to an FRS conversation. These are salespeople. What do they know about the FRS? Again, they know a little bit more than you do, right? But really, they're just trying to get you in there and sell you probably some sort of high-cost insurance product to put into your 403B account. That's usually what they do. You can even see I underlined it there. I may offer insurance products from insurance companies that are unaffiliated. Yeah, that's exactly what they're going to do. At least this company was honest enough to put it at the bottom. Most don't even do that. But you've got to learn. This looks official. It looks fancy. I mean, don't get me wrong. Coastal Wealth is a big financial company, but just understand what game they're playing here, and understand what Trojan horse technique they're using here. You get a lot of these. These are fake companies, by the way. This EST appointments. They're all coming from one insurance salesman. They just go by different random names. But it's summertime. It's time for a pension review. We specialize in the state pension plan. They don't. It's an insurance salesman. They don't specialize in the state pension plan. Right? Value teachers. I know value teachers is pretty active in our district. Just FYI, not that value teachers, and by the way, I'm not saying anything I talk about in these companies, they're not doing anything illegal. But they are trying to get their money into your pockets. All right. Value teachers, just so you know, it's an MLM. It's a multi-level marketing company where they really make money by getting people under them to sell. And they just sell insurance products. That's all these people are. They're just insurance salesmen. You could probably get your insurance license if you wanted to within a week or so. And again, that's not to denigrate insurance. They offer some very useful and necessary insurance products. My point is that what they come in and offer to teachers are often products that are unnecessary, that are expensive, and they try to get you to put them into your 403B accounts. So you can even see Value Teachers has, you might not be able to see that, but they're affiliated with National Life Group. National Life Group is a large insurance company. That's one of our 403B vendors. So that's ultimately their end game here. Their end game is not to teach you about the FRS. Their end game is to have you come in and sign you up for a overpriced, complicated annuity product that they put into your 403b account. And Scott and Dan will talk more about that in the second half part of the presentation. But that's not what they make it seem like, right? All these things are all about FRS and drop and Social Security. It's a Trojan horse. And then just a couple more. I'm beating a dead horse here, but we get these often. I know I get them all the time, and I'm sure you get them all the time. This one actually even used the FRS logo. That's fraud. Right? That is straight up fraud right there. They often say they're approved agents for Palm Beach County Schools. They haven't been vetted by, I mean, the only reason they can get away with saying they're approved is because, again, it's someone who has an insurance license who can sell insurance products through one of the vendors who is approved on the 403b vendor list, which we're hoping to minimize here in the near future. But it's like, I think 16 or 17 companies right now. So that's how they get away with saying we're approved agents, simply because they have an insurance license, and maybe the National Life Group lets them sell insurance products, or AXA Equitable lets them sell insurance products, one of those insurance companies. That's how they get away with it. But that's part of their tactic, is to make it seem like they are affiliated with the district. Yeah, that's troublesome, Patrick. Yeah, that's why I do these presentations. Right, it's because, yes, they are at many district-wide events. And the reason they are often is because, and they're at a lot of schools too, and the reason they're at schools is because they just call up and they say, because most schools don't know any better, they call up and say, hey, can I come in? I'm an approved agent with the district. I can sell these products with this company, and I'll bring donuts, and I'll bring sandwiches, right? And if you're at the school, you're like, oh yeah, come on, bring in sandwiches for our teachers. That sandwich ain't worth it, let me tell you. As I say a lot when I do these, go there and eat the sandwich and leave, right? By all means. So you see some more of these. I could go on and on showing these, but they all say they're complimentary. Of course they're complimentary. They're on their hands and knees begging you to come in there. They call themselves different names. They're not financial planners. I mean, anybody can call themselves a financial planner. It's not an official designation. They sometimes call themselves professional financial agents. They'll call themselves certified retirement specialists. These are just names they're making up. I can call myself a certified retirement specialist. It doesn't mean anything. This one was, again, straight up false. Equitable is one of the more common ones that you find in our district. And it says, my name is Adam, although Adam recently left. And he says, I handle the 403b for the Palm Beach County School District. No, Mr. Adam does not handle the 403b for the Palm Beach County School District. That is one vendor on a long list who can offer some 403b products. But again, the language that they're using there is trying to make it seem like they're officially with the districts, right? Tina, yes, the second half of the presentation is going to be about that. Yep. And I'll just do that. And the reason they can do this is information asymmetry, right? They know they have more information about FRS than you have. Right? They know a little bit more about the pension than you have. So that's how they get you in. And you're here right now, you're thinking, I need to know more about the FRS. And so let me go see what they look official, they sound official. Let me go and hear what they have to say. And really, when you go there to get more FRS, they may give you, don't get me wrong, they may give you some good information about the FRS. They do know some. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't know anything about the FRS. They do, but that's not their primary purpose being there. Their primary purpose is to sell you an expensive product. All right, so let's jump into then the FRS, the pension and investment plans. Let me start with this, and that is just, can you answer the question, what's a pension? We sort of throw the word around a lot. And from talking to a lot of teachers, I realized a lot of people don't really understand what a pension is. The definition of a pension is just a lifetime stream of income. That's all it is. And that's the purpose of the FRS pension plan. Now, the investment plan is a little different, but the purpose of the pension plan is you basically take a huge sum of money. That's the money that you've been putting in and that your employer, the district's been putting in for you, and you annuitize it. Annuitizing means I take a big lump sum of money and I try to turn it into a lifetime stream of income, right? This is what insurance companies largely do. They have actuaries and things like that who determine about how much longer you're going to live and things like that, and how to stretch that money out. So that's all a pension is. It is an annuity. It's money that's meant to last for the rest of your life when you retire. And you will get that benefit for the rest of your life until you pass away. You're automatically a member of the FRS as an employee of Palm Beach County School District. As I've said, there are two different plans. So again, do you know which one you're in? Right? They're fundamentally different. There's the investment plan. The investment plan is what we call a DC plan. It's a defined contribution plan. Right? So it's exactly what it sounds like. You get a defined contribution going into an account. You're contributing to an investment account. Your employer, the district, is also contributing into that investment account for you. Right? That's what a DC plan is. The pension plan is a defined benefit plan. Right? Meaning that you both have been contributing money, and then at the end of it, you get a defined benefit for the rest of your life. Right? So they're fundamentally different plans. No matter which plan you're in, you contribute 3%. Your employer contributes a little more depending on which plan you're in. I'll talk about that. Currently, as it stands, this changed in 2018. You're defaulted into the investment plan. If you're a first-time employee, they throw a million things at you. And one of the things they throw at you is you have to pick which FRS plan you want to be in. Most teachers are so overwhelmed at that point, they often ignore it. For many years, you were defaulted into the pension plan. Not any longer. Now, if you're still in special risk class, which is like the school police and things like that, they still default you into pension plan. But for the regular class, is what they call educators, we are now defaulted into the investment plan. So if you don't know which plan you're in and you were employed prior to 2018 and you don't remember making a choice, you're probably in the pension plan. If you were employed post 2018 and you don't remember making a choice, you're probably in the investment plan. I will remind you that the FRS sends you a member annual statement every single year. Read it. Read it. They do really good education. Most people take it and throw it away. It used to be physical. They used to mail it to you. It is no longer. Now they send it via email. But read it. There's a lot of really good information that is in that member annual statement every single year. If you can also figure out which plan you're in by signing into myfrs.com. I put the website right there. You may have to get a PIN to do that, and usually they have to mail that to you. So it may take you a couple days to get signed in. But please, if you've never signed into myfrs.com, sign in. That's one way to figure out which plan you're in, because I hear that a lot is people tell me, I don't know which plan I'm in. It's very normal. Well, sign into myfrs.com. Right? If you're in the pension plan, full disclosure, I'm in the pension plan. This is what it looks like when you first sign in. So here's a screenshot of what it would look like. It tells me how much credit I have. I said I'm in my 21st year at the district. I have 2 years that were in a private school, which they don't count for FRS service, unfortunately. So it tells me I've got 20 and a quarter year service. This is the value percent. I'll talk about what this means in a second. And then this is accrued percentage, means this is the percentage. If I were to retire and wait until full retirement age, which I'll talk about what that is in a little bit, I would get 32% of my average final compensation for life. Right, for life. And so then and it also gives you these really good estimates down here, right? You see at the bottom. All right, the current estimate, what this is I could, if I wanted to, I could retire right now, right? And it reduces your benefit by 5% each year you're under full retirement age. So for me, because I was employed prior to 2011, my full retirement age is considered 62. I am 44 years old, so it's do the math there, whatever 18 times 5 is 90%. So it reduces my benefit by 90%. So no, thank you. I'm not going to retire right now and start taking a benefit. I will pass on your $270 a month for the rest of my life. And this tells me if I were to go until I get to 30 years of service, which is when I could retire, which I'm 2/3 of the way there already. This would be, and then I retire, then this would be my, depending on which option I choose, which I'll talk about what those options are in a few moments. And then this says, oh, if I wait until I do it based on years of service, right, which would be much later, which would be what, 6-7 years after that for me, this is what my benefit would be. So obviously the longer I work, the more higher my benefit is. my point being to showing you this is just go to this page. It'll also give you estimates. So you can put in different numbers. I said, oh, what if I wait until I'm 65 and retire? And then it'll tell you that it'll tell you all these different, hey, okay, based on this, it does a really good job of estimating for you down to the cent. All right, so there are no surprises here. So get on that. If you want to run some estimates, get on the FRS and that'll run some estimates for you. And this is what the investment plan page looks like. I don't have as much access to the investment plan because I'm not in the investment plan. So let's talk about the difference between these two plans. We've talked about them a little bit already. I said the pension plan is your very traditional defined benefit plan. The purpose of a pension is to give you a monthly benefit for life and also possibly to your spouse. I'll talk about that in a moment. And basically all the risk in a pension plan is on the state's shoulders. They manage what's called the pension plan trust fund. They take all the money they get from you, from your employer, and they have to manage it. They invest it. They do a lot of different things with it. And then they promise you, right, guarantee you that when you retire, they use the formula to estimate what your monthly benefit's going to be. So there's very little risk on your shoulders, right? You're just pumping 3% in from every single paycheck, and then you retire, and it's just a formula that's going to determine your benefit. Does anybody know how many years of service? Vested mean to be vested. To be vested means you get a benefit. That's what vested means. It just means you've earned the right to claim a benefit. Well, Tina, you're like right in the middle because currently it's 8, right? If you were employed after 2011, if you were enrolled prior to 2011, it's 6. So you got right in the middle there, Tina. You were just averaging them. That's what you were doing. So again, if you're employed first employed post 2011, you have to work for 8 years before you can potentially claim a benefit. If you were first employed prior to 2011, you have to work for 6 years to get a full benefit. I already said this, for the pension plan, you contribute 3% of your salary. What you may not know is how much your employer contributes, more than you think. Right? Your employer contributes 13.5% of your salary each paycheck to go to FRS. All right. So one way people ask me, how can I don't know which plan I'm in. Well, one is you can go to myfrs.com, but the other one is look at your paycheck. It doesn't say which one you're on, but if you can do the math, and you can, there's a line item that says like employee contributions to FRS should be 3% of your salary. And there's another line item that says employer contributions to FRS. And so if it's roughly 4 to 5 times what you're contributing, you're probably in the pension plan. And then I've already said this, the benefit you get for life is based on a formula. So we're going to, in one of these next slides or two, we're going to look at what exactly is that formula. Oh, it's the next slide, right? So people always want to know, you should want to know what the formula is because you can calculate this yourself. The formula is not difficult, right? So here's the formula that's going to determine if you're in the pension plan, what your yearly benefit will be. And then if you want to figure it out what it is monthly, just divide it by 12. First of all, your years of service, right? That's obvious. Multiplied by, or then times what they call a multiplier. Every state pension system has a different multiplier. The state of Florida's multiplier is 1.6%. It's on the low end. Some states have a lot higher multipliers than that. But so that's step one. Take years of creditable service, years of service under an FRS employer, multiply it by 1.6. Step two is getting your average final compensation, right? That's self-explanatory. But to figure out your average final compensation, it again depends on when you were first employed. If you can't figure it out from these slides, in 2011, they made some cuts to the pension plan. They made it a little bit more difficult to get your benefit, which is unfortunate for those who were employed after 2011. But if you were employed prior to 2011, it's your 5 highest years of compensation, right? So it doesn't matter when those occurred. Usually they're going to be your last 5 years, but it doesn't have to be. It's whatever your 5 highest years of compensation were. If you were first employed post 2011, it's your average 8 highest years. So it's probably going to be a little bit lower of an average because, well, for obvious reasons. And then I always want to mention this. If you work in a position that's 12 months, like my position is considered 12 months, For teachers, you're not considered 12 months, but you may at some point in the future work a 12-month position. You don't just get sick leave, you also get what's called annual leave. That's basically vacation time. And your average final compensation, if you have annual leave up to 500 hours, you can cash that out right before you retire, and that can also be included in your average final compensation. That can be big, because that can really up your average final compensation, which will then up your benefit. All right, but again, if you've been a teacher and not a 12-month employee, you don't get annual leave, so that's not important. And then basically you take step one, right? Multiply it by step two. So you take your years of credible service times 1.6, multiply it by your average final compensation, either your highest average or your highest 5 or your highest 8, and that'll equal your full retirement benefit if you take option one. And I'll talk more about what these options are in a second. And then again, that would be your yearly benefit. If you wanted to know it monthly, you just divide it by 12. There is a possible step 4, and that's COLA. Does anyone know what COLA is? Anyone want to put in the chat if they know what COLA is? I'm going to talk about COLA a little bit, COLA. Thank you, Tina. Yep, cost of living. So COLA is your cost of living adjustment. In other words, it's meant to make sure your benefit keeps up with inflation. Well, guess what? In 2011, they also took away the COLA. So there is no, for any service after 2011, there is no cost of living adjustment. But if you had service before 2011, you can get a COLA just for the years of service pre-2011. There's a formula which I'll show here in a bit, but I will say there is legislation on the table. It was on last year, and it's on again this year to reinstate the COLA. So it could still be reinstated in the future. What are my payout options in terms of the pensions? Those are the options, right? All right, so option 1 is you get a monthly benefit for life, you and only you, right? This is what we call the single annuitant option. It means one person can get this benefit. Once you pass away, there is no benefit. There is no benefit that continues to a beneficiary. All right, so this is always going to be the one that's the highest, is option 1, because all the money's going to you, and once you pass away, the money's done. There is nobody else who's going to get anything. Option 2, the next 3 options will all be a reduced monthly benefit, because somebody else may be getting a part of it when you pass away. So option 2 is a little bit of a strange one, but there are people in certain scenarios who may do this, and that's that the beneficiary who you whoever you name as your beneficiary, they can get the benefit if you pass away only for up to 10 years after you retire. Okay, so this is higher than option 3 and 4, but lower than number 1, because you may have a beneficiary getting part of your benefit. What this means, and it's only 10 years. So if you were to pass away 8 years after retirement, your beneficiary would receive the benefit for 2 years. And then once that 10-year period is up, it's done. Right? If you were to pass away in the first year, they would get it for 9 years, 9 or 10 years, depending on when. So that's what option 2 is. Option 3 and option 4, you can name what's called a joint annuitant. Now, a joint annuitant is different from a beneficiary. Right? A joint annuitant has to be a spouse, a child under the age of 25, or it could be someone who relies on you for, I think it's over 50%. They're dependent on you. It could be a disabled child. It could be an elderly parent. So there's some other qualifiers in there. But your joint annuitant with option 3 gets the same exact monthly benefit that you would have got when you were still alive and getting a benefit. So basically with option 3, and by the way, that's going to be the lowest one of all of them. But with option 3, they get the benefit, or I'm sorry, you get the benefit. You pass away, your joint annuitant continues to receive that same exact benefit until they pass away. And then when they pass away, it's done and over with. Option 4 is similar to that, with some different nuances to it. For option 4, This one's unique because with option 4, if either you or your joint annuitant pass away, either one, then whoever the surviving one is, the benefits reduced by 2/3 for the remaining part of their life. Right? So again, I'll repeat that. This is the only one that's like this. So let's say this is your benefit, and you're getting your benefit, and then your spouse passes away. Your benefit would be reduced to 2/3 of the benefit, right? And that would be same vice versa. So that one's a little confusing. That one isn't reduced quite as much. That benefit isn't reduced quite as much as option 3. I've already talked about the COLA, as Tina told us. That's the cost of living adjustment. The way to figure it out is you take the years you worked prior to July 2011, you divide it by the total number of years that you worked, and then you multiply that by 3%, and that'll give you the COLA you're going to get. It actually hurts those people who work longer. So the longer you work, the less your COLA is going to be. Why? Because you're going to have more years that are considered non-COLA years. I know for me, I've done the math on mine. I worked, I think, 8 years prior to 2011. And if I were to work like a full 30 or 32 years, I would get a big, huge, whopping 0.5% each year of COLA. That's it. Right? So it's not much. All we can do is be hopeful that current legislation passes and they reintroduce our COLA. When can you collect full benefits? In other words, what's considered my full retirement age? Well, depends, right? Prior to 2011, it would be age 62 or 30 years of service, whichever came first, right? You do have to be vested, obviously. In other words, you've worked either 6 years or 8 years, depending on when you start, or it would be 6 years for prior to 2011. However, if you were first employed after 2011, that's gone up. It's now, to get full benefits, you now have to be age 65 or have worked 33 years of service, right? So they've increased the amount of time you have to spend working for those who first started post 2011. And then I'm not going to show you, but that's just an example of how to figure out average final compensation. I've already shown you that formula a couple times. I mentioned this already, so I'll repeat it quickly. Can I retire early and collect benefits? Yes, you can. But understand that your benefit's going to be reduced 5% for every year that you're under your normal retirement age. Doesn't matter how many years of service, right? It's all about your age in terms of figuring this out. So that's why I said once you get to be, if you were enrolled prior to 2011, once you're 42, basically, because remember, 62 is the full retirement age, so 20 years prior is 42, then you can collect some benefit. But as I saw, it's really not worth it. I mean, if they're going to reduce it 5% every year, that's pretty harsh. In terms of death benefits, I get asked this a lot. Well, if I were to pass away, what happens to my benefits? If I were to pass away before I retire, what happens to my benefits? Well, your joint annuitant can choose a couple different things. One, they can get a refund of your contributions. So that's that 3% you've been paying in. And by the way, you can go on the FRS site. I was just on mine today. I think I've paid something like $25,000 over the course of my career into FRS. They could get just that refunded to them. Or they could take lifetime monthly benefits based on when you would have retired. Right? They can do one of two things. They can either say, oh, the date of your passing is the day you retired, and then the FRS will calculate the benefit, and it'll be option 3. Or they can say you can defer it until you would have, and the person who passed would have been of age in retirement, and say, well, I'm just going to wait, because if they wait, the benefit will be a little bit higher, and then I'll take and claim the benefit then. So those are the options if you were to pass before you retire. If it's after you retire, it all depends on which option you chose, right? We already talked about those 4 options. So there you see 1, 2, 3, and 4. I already walked you through those, but it just depends on which option you've chosen. So the investment plan now. Investment plan doesn't take long to talk about because it's really simple, right? There's no formulas here. There's nothing like that. The investment plan is legitimately just an investment account, right? The risk is a lot more on your shoulders, because you're contributing 3%, your employer's contributing a certain percentage, and then it gets put into an investment account. You have to determine what it gets invested in. And you have to determine whether you want to be sort of a little more risky with it, a little more conservative with it. And then when you retire, you have to determine what to do with that money. There's no fixed benefit. You just have a large investment account. With this, you're vested after 1 year. That's it. So you can take your full benefit after just 1 year of service. So typically people who are not career educators, probably a little more beneficial to be in the investment plan. Whereas those who are career educators, your benefits very likely going to be more significant if you're in the pension plan. You contribute 3%. Your employer for this one contributes 8.3%. This has actually gone up a lot in the past couple of years. So for years and years, it was you contributed 3% and your employer contributed 3%. It's almost tripled in the last like 3-4 years. That's not insignificant, right? That's money that's going directly into your investment account. They're trying to make the investment plan a little more attractive. If it was up to the state, they'd have everybody in the investment plan because it's way less risk on their shoulders. But again, I'm not saying that to say that it's not that you shouldn't be in the investment plan. There are some definite benefits to the investment plan as well. But so again, if you're unsure of which plan you're in, again, look at the line item in your paycheck for what you contribute, which is 3%, and then look at what the employer, what the district contributes, and it should be roughly 3 times what you contribute. So that'll give you a good idea if you're in that plan. Your monthly benefit is not based on a formula, right? Your monthly benefit is simply based on how much has been contributed to the account and how have the investments performed over time. Maybe they performed stellar and you're to the moon. Maybe they've not performed quite as well and you're not as high as you think. We don't know. All right, so I said it's a little bit riskier on this one. You only have 19 investment choices. It actually is a really good plan. In terms of investment choices, it's really high quality. You've got a pretty wide mix of these 19 investments. You've got some what we call target date retirement funds. I think in the second session, they may talk briefly about what a target date retirement fund is. And they're low cost. So the investment choices are good. You can rest easy knowing that if you're in the investment plan, you've got some pretty high quality investment choices. But again, this is something that you need to educate. We're not going to talk a lot. We just don't have enough time to talk about like different types of investment and things like that. But you need to know what these different types of investments are, because this is what's going to determine how much money you have in this account in retirement is how well these perform, right, over time. What are the payout options with the investment plan? You have a couple payout options, right? Number one, you could just take a lump sum distribution. I was working with a teacher last year who had somewhere in the vicinity of $800,000 in his investment account. He'd worked for 40 plus years in the district. He could take that as a lump sum distribution. He could receive an $800,000 check. But please understand, there are some serious tax implications of some of these decisions. When you receive a distribution, that counts as ordinary income. Ordinary income is taxed at ordinary income tax rates at the end of the year. So that's why we always say you're going to need to, when it's time for you to withdraw money, it's very beneficial to you to consult a tax professional to make sure you minimize your tax burden year over year. No matter what, your employer is going to hold 20% for income taxes. If you want to distribute it before you're age 59 and a half, I know that's a strange year, you will be hit with a 10% penalty. So you probably don't want to do that. You have other options though. You can also do what's called a direct rollover. If it's another qualified retirement plan, meaning that it's a pre-tax retirement account, something like an IRA, something like a 403B, which we're getting ready to talk about. It could be a 401A account. We're not really going to get into 401A accounts. Then you can roll that over with no tax implications, right? So that's an option, is you can roll it over to another tax qualified plan. You can also, by the way, roll it into the FRS investment plan. That's tax qualified, which, like I just told you, the FRS investment plan has some really good low cost investment options available for you. Or you can set up periodic distributions from the plan. You can say, hey, I want X amount of money every Y days or Y months, and they can set that up for you. You really have a lot of options when it comes to what to do with your investment plan money. Oops, I missed one. And the other one, and this is an important one. The other option that you have is you can basically turn it into a pension. You can annuitize the money, right? So you can take that big lump sum of money you have, and you can purchase what's called an immediate fixed income or a deferred annuity. In essence, what that means is you turn over a big lump sum of money, and FRS has an account with MetLife, with an insurance company, where you can purchase one of these, and they will take that big lump sum of money, they will annuitize it, and they will come up with a formula and say, based on this lump sum of money you just gave me, we're going to give you X amount of dollars for the rest of your life. In essence, you turn it into your own pension. Or you can do any combination of those, right? You can maybe take a lump sum of some of it, annuitize some of it, roll over some of it. You have a lot of options of what you want to do with that. With an investment plan, there are no age or service requirements to collect your benefits. You can take them whenever you want. But again, remember what I just said, there's some serious implications of when you take it. There's implications if you take it before 59 and a half, you'll get hit with a 10% penalty. And then there's some serious tax implications because it's going to be counted as ordinary income tax depending on how it gets distributed to you. So it's a very important decision. The death benefits are real simple. Whoever your beneficiary is gets the account value. Simple. All right, so whatever the account value is, if you were to pass away, that gets passed along to your designated beneficiary. If it's after you've taken a distribution, it all depends on how you took the distribution. Right? If you annuitized it, well, you got to talk to MetLife and see if there's a survivor benefit, right? I can't give you a blanket statement for after you've taken a distribution because it all depends on how you took the distribution. But if you were to pass away and have an investment plan account, then whoever your named beneficiary is gets the full account value of that. Two more things I'll add before turning it over because I see we're at the 1 o'clock hour. The two more things I will add is I'll talk about the health insurance subsidy for a minute here, and then I'll just talk about DROP for maybe 2 minutes because I know I always get a lot of questions about the DROP program. There's a lot of uncertainty about exactly what that is. Also notice I highlight a few things here. I want to make clear that the things I highlight over the next few slides are actually things that have changed in the last year. Believe it or not, this is going to be hard to believe when I tell you, legislation was passed last year that improved our benefits, that improved our pension benefits. It is hard to fathom after everything I've been telling you in this about all the hits that our pension and investment plans have taken over the past couple of years. The tide has started to turn. They need a way to bring employees back. So they've started to improve our benefits a little bit. So one of the things they did was they improved the health insurance subsidy. This is money that you can get to help pay for health insurance in retirement. We know that's going to be one of your biggest costs in retirement. And basically you get $7.50 per month. It was $5 before earlier this year, but you can get $7.50 per month to help pay for your insurance up to a max of $225. So that's 30 years of service. So you can get a max of $225 per month to help pay for health insurance in retirement. It's a nice little benefit. And then so again, I told you I'm not going to tell you which plan you should be in. That's not the purpose of today's session. One of the benefits that we haven't talked about to being in the pension plan is that you can participate in DROP. For those who don't know what DROP is, DROP, you can see what it stands for up there at the top. It stands for Deferred Retirement Option Program. I hear so much confusion around DROP. So I'm going to try to explain it the best I can in about 2 minutes because I want to turn it over to Dan from 403 Wise here. But I do want to stress that it can be very lucrative potentially, and it only got more lucrative with this legislation last year to participate in DROP. So let me just throw up the whole thing up there and I'll just run through what DROP is. But in essence, DROP means you retire. It means you retire and keep working. I know that sounds weird, but that's in essence what DROP is. You state and file paperwork that you are retiring, but are entering the drop program. You're deferring your retirement, and you're going to keep working and earning a full salary. However, for purposes of FRS freezes your benefit for life. So however many years you work when you enter drop, that's what's, remember, we just got done talking about the benefit of how you determine your benefit for FRS. That gets frozen. So you're going to get that for the remaining part of your life. The benefit to participating in drop is that they take so then you're considered retired, which means you can collect a benefit, right, while still working. But they don't pay the benefit directly to you. They put the benefit into a special account for you. And that account now earns monthly compound interest at 4%. That went up. That was, by the way, it was 1.3% before this year. They tripled it almost. That's not insignificant. That is very significant. So that's the benefit, is basically you retire, start collecting a benefit check, and that benefit check goes into a special account in which they pay you 4% interest until you then officially leave work. By the way, they extended how long you can be in drop. You notice I highlighted that too. It used to be 5 years, right? Was the length of time you could stay in drop. It's now 8 years. You can stay up to 8 years in drop. So you can basically be retired, collect a check that is put into a special account earning 4% interest while still working and earning a full paycheck. And then at the end of that 5 to 8 years, when you then do retire, they'll pay out that paycheck to you, which could be significant. I just ran a projection this morning before we did this that said if I go to full retirement age and then enter them, I don't want to work 8 years after I retire. That's insanity to me. But if I were to do that, my drop paycheck would be over $800,000. Maybe I will work another 8 years afterwards. Like I said, it's not an insignificant number. So that is something definitely to consider. Once drop ends, your employment's terminated. In other words, you're not working for the district anymore. You get your drop paycheck, and then you will then also start receiving your monthly, whatever your monthly pension check was. So again, you can only participate if you're in the pension plan. You can begin anytime after you reach normal retirement age, right? That, by the way, that's either based on age or service. So again, it's either age 62 or 30 years of service if it's your pre-2011, or it's age 65 and 33 years of service if you're hired post-2011. Again, I said you can remain for 8 years. You can even ask for an extension. If you're instructional personnel, meaning you're a teacher, you can even ask to extend it for another 2 years. And your principal can make the decision if they do or don't want to allow that. So you could be in drop for up to 10 years. That's crazy. So that's been extended significantly from what it was prior to this. In terms of how much you're going to receive, like I said, it's based on your pension paycheck. And then the very last thing I'll talk about is how is it paid out to you? Well, it's going to be paid out to you very similarly to how the investment plan was paid out to you. Those are your options. You could take a lump sum. If I did what I said before, I could take that $800,000 in one big lump sum. Probably not the wisest decision from a tax perspective, because again, I'm going to pay ordinary income tax on that. You could do a direct rollover to another qualified retirement plan. So you could roll it over to, maybe you have your own IRA, maybe you have a 403B, which we're getting ready to talk about. You can roll over to a 403B. You can also roll this over to an FRS investment plan, or any combination of that you choose. Right? Simple as that. I will tell you with what we talked about at the beginning, with what Dan and Scott are getting ready to talk about, this is one of the things that these salespeople that I referenced, this is another one of the things that they're after. They know that you may be in drop, because it's pretty common to participate in drop. They know that you're receiving a significant check at the end of drop. They want their money on that check. All right, so that is another big part of their game. That's Trojan horse technique is not just to get you to sign up for a 403B account. They want your drop money and to make a commission off that. And a lot of times they'll suggest you go to the investment plan, because they know that when you retire, you can take a distribution from that investment plan. They want your investment plan money as well. So that's just So we're clear-eyed here that that is a part of the game that's going on. But with that being said, that is the end of my presentation. You've heard enough from me. Let's get to the much smarter professionals than me. If anybody has any specific questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can wait to the end. We're all going to wait around at the end at about 2 o'clock to answer questions. So thank you, Ashley. Thanks again, Ashley, for having us on. But with that being said, we're going to turn it over. You see Dan's presentation coming up. I introduced it a little bit at the beginning, but for those who weren't here at the beginning, we are so incredibly fortunate to be joined by Dan Otter. Dan is the founder of the nonprofit 403bwise.org. He's been doing it for many years. He's heavily involved in not just education, which is what he's doing today, but he's involved in a lot of advocacy to try to solve this problem nationwide. And so I can say with confidence we have really one of the foremost experts in the entire country that's going to speak to you. So you got a little taste of one of the stools that you should be resting on in retirement, one of the legs of that stool, which was your pension. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dan. He's going to talk about one of the other legs of that stool, which is your own personal savings, which could be a 403b account. So Dan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Aaron, you are too kind. And yes, I've been at this a very long time, which means I must not be very good at my job because the K-12 403b is very broken still. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being educators. I'm going to do my best to share what I think is some important information. And as a quick introduction, I am a former elementary and middle school teacher. I also taught at the college level. And I was also a college administrator, which was not a great job, by the way. My partner, Scott, is going to be joining us for the question part of this presentation. So he'll be joining us in about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Scott got into 403b advocacy because his wife is a teacher, and he saw just how bad the products being sold to his wife and her colleagues were. So he reached out to me way back in 2000, and we connected, and we've been collaborating ever since. Going to start with a question here. It's a little provocative. Are you making the $306,382 mistake? Many teachers are. All right. How did I get involved in this? So way back in the 90s, I was an elementary school teacher in Southern California. There is a staff picture from the year 2000, 2001. You can see me there with the arrow. I used to have dark hair, no wrinkles. Life seems simpler, but it probably wasn't if I'm being super realistic. Anyway, my first year on the job, the students had left for the day, and I was frantically getting ready for the next day's instruction, as first-year teachers do, when there was suddenly a knock at my door, my classroom door, and a woman poked her head in. And I'll never forget what she said. She said, "Do you care about your financial future?" I mean, that's a jarring question to get anytime, but especially when you are head down, desperately trying to get ready for the next day's instruction. I meekly said yes, which I think is really the only correct answer. And she took that as an invitation to come into my room. And she started talking about all these investments she had and how she helped the third grade teacher next door, the sixth grade teacher down the hall. Folks, I had no idea what she was talking about. I had some vague idea that we had a pension, that if I taught 25, 30 years, I'd get some percentage of my final salary until I die. And that sounded pretty good, but I knew nothing about what she was talking about. I politely listened and said I would get back in touch if I was interested. Well, over the ensuing years, I began to self-educate myself about saving for retirement. And what I found out about the 403b horrified me. I found out she was selling me high cost investments that benefited her. She was selling me investments charging 2-3%. She wanted to sell me investment that would have a surrender penalty. So I'd have to pay 5-7% of the balance just to get out of it. So not only would I have been taken advantage going into the investment, I would have to pay a penalty to get out of the investment. So it made me angry. And I began to learn more and more about this. And I began to share this information with my colleagues. And one day a woman said, "Look, I don't think I'm paying any fees. That's what my investment guy told me." And so I said, "Why don't you bring your statement in and I'll try to take a look at it." And again, I was new to this stuff, but I was able to find out that she was paying over 2% in fees. And she's the one that gave me the idea of starting 403(b)(y)s. She said, "Why don't you start doing like workshops and telling teachers about this stuff?" And so in 2000, I launched the website 403(b)(y)s, and we were a .com at the time. And as I mentioned earlier, I connected with Scott, and we would go around the country. This is pre-Zoom, and we would speak to teacher groups about these issues. We co-wrote a book called Teach and Retire Rich. We launched a a podcast called Teach and Retire Rich. But our big break came in 2015 when Scott and I worked with several New York Times reporters on articles highlighting the issues with K-12 403(b) plans. Those came out in the fall of 2016. You can still access those today. To our great fortune, those articles were read by Tim Ranzetta, co-founder of the wonderful nonprofit NextGen Personal Finance. NextGen's goal is by 2030, every kid graduating from an American high school will have taken a standalone personal finance class. I know your state is one of the states that are on board with requiring personal finance instruction. Tim is an amazing guy. He read the articles, reached out to Scott and I to tell us how horrified he was to hear how teachers were being treated. And he asked if there was anything he could do to help us. I had just moved from New Mexico, where I was a professor, to California, where I took a job as a administrator at a small university. And he said, "Is there anything we can do to help you?" And we continued the conversations. And eventually I left my job at the university to run 403(b)(y)s full time. We became a nonprofit in 2019. I want to stress that the only revenue we get is from Tim's generous support. We sell nothing. Our whole goal is to reform the K-12 403(b) so it works better for educators like you. Okay, quick disclaimer before I get into the content here. Nothing presented or discussed is to be construed as investment or tax advice. This can be secured from a vetted fiduciary advisor. At a minimum, your advisor should hold a CFP. And I'll be sharing some resources for you where you can find the right kind of advisor, a fiduciary one. All right, here's our agenda. We're going to look at the mistake I mentioned earlier. Going to do a side-by-side comparison of the 403(b) and the 457(b). We're going to look at the impact of fees. We're going to look at your options in your 403(b) and 457(b). Scott's going to join me at the end, and we will answer your questions. All right, little scenario for you. Two Palm Beach County teachers, both age 22, both earn $49,133. Both contribute 10% of their salary to a 403(b). Both invest in the same type of investment. Both earn 7% annual return. Both contribute until age 60. One teacher accumulates more than $500,000. Pretty impressive. The other teacher accumulates more than $800,000, more than $300,000 than the other teacher. My question for you is why? You can put it in the chat. You can think about it, but we will come back to this question. All right. We jokingly refer to the Teach and Retire Rich formula. And when I say retire rich, I'm talking about not having 5 houses and very expensive cars. I'm talking about retiring very comfortably because you have 3 retirement plans. And in your school district, it looks like there's some other ways to get some extra retirement compensation. but to retire knowing you've engaged in a very important, worthwhile job, and that is working with K-12 students. So our formula is your pension plus the 403B and or the 457B. All right, one of my favorite teaching tools. I've used it with elementary school students. I've used it with college students. I love using this to compare two things that are dissimilar but also have similar traits. So let's look at the way the 403B and the 457B are similar. Well, this year you can contribute up to $22,500 in each of these plans. If you're over age 50 like me, you can do an additional $7,500, taking advantage of something called the age 50 catch-up. You can invest on a pre-tax basis, which will lower your taxable income now, or if your employer makes this option available, you can invest on an after-tax basis. You won't get the upfront tax benefit now, but in retirement, when you take that money out, you will not pay taxes on it. You can invest in mutual funds, which we think can be an extremely low-cost way to invest. If you are still working at age 59 and a half, you can take penalty-free withdrawals from each of these plans, and you can contribute the maximum to both of these plans. You can also take out loans from each of these plans. Now let's look at a couple differences. The big one with the 457B is that whenever you separate service, so whenever you leave your employer, regardless of your age, you could be age 25, you could be age 50, you can tap your 457B tax penalty free. Now you'll still owe taxes on the withdrawal. So if you take out $25,000 one year, it'll look like you earned $25,000 and you'll pay taxes on that, but you will not be penalized. In contrast with the 403B, to get this same benefit, you have to wait till you're age 55. So if you're someone that think you might leave your employer, you might leave the profession, and again, I'm not trying to get anyone to leave the classroom. We desperately need really good teachers, but it's nice to know that you have this option available. So this is one of the reasons we're really big fans of the 457B. All right, I'm going to show you a scenario here, a savings scenario. And again, I know this is not realistic for a lot of people, but I just want you to know what is possible. So imagine you contribute $22,500 to your 403B, the same amount to your 457B. You're over age 50, you can contribute another $15,000 to these plans. I'll let the math teachers and maybe others add this amount up. Give you a moment here to do a little mental math. $60,000. Again, I realize this is a significant chunk of money, but if maybe your teaching salary is a second income and you can live off another income, this is what's possible. Maybe you're older, your house is paid off, kids are out of college, you have some extra money. This is what's possible. Now, again, I realize it's only a small percentage of teachers that can do this, but I want you to know what is possible. All right, this is what you can do. Well, where should you put that money? And the K-12 403B is very complex as it is in part because there are so many vendors. These are the financial companies you have available to invest in. And each of these companies could have dozens of separate investments. This is overwhelming. And it's not the case if you work for a private company, if you work for Apple Computer, Disney, which is, has a heavy presence in the state of Florida. At Disney or at Apple or at Google or any company you may know, Coca-Cola, one low-cost vendor that has been vetted by the employer. The chief problem with the K-12 403B is that it falls outside of federal fiduciary regulation. There's something called ERISA that was passed way back in 1974. It stands for the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. And it requires the employer to be a fiduciary when it offers a retirement plan. For some unknown reason, the K-12 403B is not subject to this federal law. So this is why our plans are so bad. And this is why you are so lucky to have someone like Aaron in your district putting on workshops like this and educating you about this plan. Not enough school districts are doing what Aaron's doing. And again, you are so fortunate to have this very valuable resource and pretty awesome person. All right, back to your vendors. That is overwhelming. Who do you pick? We constantly tell people, reporters, anyone that'll listen to us, the vendors in K-12 403B plans are terrible. And then people started saying, well, give us some evidence. And we said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We are going to endeavor to publish as many K-12 403B vendor lists as possible. And not only are we going to publish the list, we're going to rate each vendor and grade each plan. So my partner, Scott, developed this simple, I think, brilliant way to grade the vendors using the stoplight system. You know this: red, stop; yellow, caution; green, go. So we divided all the big K-12 403B vendors among these three different colors. So let's start with the red, and we broke it up into three categories: red plus, red, red minus. Think of this as F plus, F, F minus. Okay. And to get on this list, you charge lots of fees. You require a commission-based salesperson. You can add asset-based fees of over 1% on top of the cost of the underlying investment. Not only that, you sell one of the worst products and the most deceptive products ever invented, the indexed annuity. This product promises the upside of the market without the risk. And there is just no such thing, folks. So if you have a vendor on this list, we would urge you to stop. And unfortunately, a lot of these companies are available to you. I'll give you a moment to look at that. It's not only the fees, the surrender charges, the commissions, it's also the conflicts of interest. This is taken from an Equitable document, Equitable, also known as AXA. They require their salespeople to sell a certain amount of their products just to get health insurance. Think about that. Imagine, for you to get health insurance, you had to give out a certain percentage of A's. It actually gives me compassion for the people that work for Equitable. We all respond to incentives, and I would describe this as a very perverse incentive. So when an Equitable person is in your staff lounge, is in your email box, think about what their incentives are. I would argue they do not line up with your incentives. Speaking of incentives, these salespeople get really nice vacations by selling very expensive products to teachers. And here's just a handful or two flyers of recent trips they earned off the backs of teachers. Valak Financial Advisors were fined by the SEC for behavior in your state. And it wasn't just Valak, it was Equitable. They were fined $50 million by the SEC for failure to disclose certain fees in the state of Florida. All right, let's go to our caution vendors. And these companies, if they're available to you and that's all you have, these are not terrible. You can generally find products charging only about 0.4%. So we think that is a fine amount to pay. We'd rather see it lower. Generally, anything more than 0.8%, 1%, we think is too much. So these are fine. Believe you have two of these products available to you. But what makes me especially happy about your district are the green vendors or vendor. These are very low cost. You can build, and this is the middle level green. So these are good. There's actually one level higher, which I'll show you in a moment. These are very low cost. You don't need a commission-based salesman. There's lots of transparency. There's no upfront or back-end surrender charges or commissions. So these are fine products. You don't have any of these companies available. What you have is something better. You have what we would consider the best of the best. Our two favorite companies are Fidelity and Vanguard, and you are fortunate enough to have Fidelity available. You can build an index-based portfolio for under 20 bips, which stands for percentage points, so less than 0.2%. So that is very fortunate to have this company available. So what grade does your school district earn? Well, you get a C. And I know that doesn't sound great, but in order to get a C, you have to offer at least one low-cost investment, and that's what you do. Now, the reason it's not higher because you offer what we would call, again, the best of the best, it's because of all these other companies, I would argue, littering your vendor list. The problem is, if we had data on all of the contributions each month from your school district, I can almost guarantee the majority is going to the high-cost companies. The reason? The salespeople coming into your staff lounges, flooding your email inboxes. Now, your district, because of Aaron, might be a little bit different because of the educational workshops he does. But where I live in Southern California, the big school district in our area, Los Angeles Unified, we get the data each month on where the money's flowing. And despite having a couple of green vendors available, the majority of the money is flowing to the high-cost companies. So that's why you have a C. But if you're someone who invests with Fidelity, well, then you get an A, and that's what really matters. So if you know anyone, any other teachers who maybe are in different districts and they have any interest in seeing if their school district is in our database, you're looking at a screenshot of our homepage. So right from the top, you can search school districts by state, and then there'll be a menu of the different school districts. So that's how you would access your particular school district vendor list. Now, there are more than 13,500 school districts in the country, and to date, we have data on over 4,500. Because we've got data on all the large school districts, we now have information covering over 1.7 million teachers, and we have data for 55% of all public K-12 teachers. Here are grades so far, and they're pretty grim. Only 3% have received an A. In order to get an A, you have to take your plan out to bid. You have to do what private employers do. You need to realize that it is a privilege to let a financial company sell products to your most valuable asset, the employees. You take this out to bid, you make the financial companies compete in order to win the business. As it is now, the financial companies compete in your staff lounge. That is not what you want. You want them competing at the district level. Let the employer vet them, pick the best low-cost single vendor. That's how you get an A. A B, we only have 19 of those. Now, you can be a multi-vendor plan as long as the companies have lowered their prices and you've put the plan out to bid. You already know what a C is, at least one green rated vendor. A D is at least one yellow vendor. So a D graded district will have no green vendors. And unfortunately, more than 16% of the districts we've graded receive an F because they don't even have a yellow vendor available. So again, you are very fortunate in your district to have not only Aaron, but Fidelity. All right, let's go back to this question. Why is there such a difference in the accumulation of retirement balance? Go ahead and put it in the message. Welcome, Scott. Aaron, you have got a bright group here. Yes, Tina, fees. And that's because it was the type. Let's look at the type of investment they were in. Both investors were in the same type of investment, a target date fund. And this is one of my favorite simple ways to invest. All you have to do is make one decision. Choose one mutual fund aimed at a date in the future that you think you might retire. The farther you are from that date, the more it's weighted to stocks. So here it is, 2023. You can see this pie chart. It's majority orange. And that's because there's such a great distance before it gets to 2060, it's allocated more heavily towards stocks. But here's the beauty of a target date fund. You don't have to do anything. Every year, the allocation becomes a little less risky until it reaches its target date when about 60% of the assets are fixed. Now, target date companies vary by company. This is sort of a general look at what they will be like when they reach their target date. So, if you recall, all the assumptions in our calculation were the same. The big difference is that teacher one chose Equitable, or maybe Equitable chose them. And you can see in this investment here, it charges over 2%, 2.1%. Teacher two came to this presentation and chose Fidelity, the Fidelity Freedom Index Fund. And this only charges 0.12%. Doesn't seem like a lot. Scott likes to say, boy, wouldn't it be nice to have 2% inflation right now? Although I think we are getting down to that level. But when it comes to fees over time, 2% is an enormous cost. And you can see that it can result in more than $300,000 in lost retirement savings. Folks, you've got a good one available. You also have 457B choices. They are the same usual suspects. And again, you are able to invest in a low-cost Fidelity 457B. Real quick, pre-tax versus Roth. This is how you choose to contribute your money, to designate your money. Let's do a quick example. Let's say you make $50,000 a year. You contribute $2,400 to a 403B, and your W-2 income will reflect earnings of $47,600. So again, you made $50,000, but instead of being taxed on that amount, you're taxed on a lower amount. And it doesn't take a math teacher to know that's a really good way to go. But in retirement, you will pay taxes when you withdraw the money. Conversely, with the Roth, same salary, same contribution, but you're paying taxes on the full $50,000 because this is after-tax money. But the real benefit is in retirement, there are no taxes at withdrawal. To Roth or not to Roth? As Scott likes to say, this is just a very difficult question to answer because it involves predicting the future. Here's some sort of broad assumptions. If you think you're going to be in the same tax bracket in retirement, you can do either. If you think it's going to be higher, it makes sense to contribute on a Roth basis. If you think it's going to be lower, it makes sense to contribute on a pre-tax basis. We talk a lot about diversifying our investments. I also think you should look at tax diversification. Maybe you have some money in Roth and some in pre-tax, which you can do. All right, if you have been watching this presentation and you're in one of those not so great companies, not so green companies, here's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to stop contributing. You're going to want to open an account with a new lower cost vendor, and then you're going to want to direct all contributions to that new vendor. Then you're going to want to transfer that money from that old vendor to the new vendor. You can see an asterisk there, folks. You want to determine if there are surrender fees. And if you're moving from Equitable, there's going to be surrender fees. And so you're going to have to determine, do you want to rip that Band-Aid off, pay those surrender charges, and move that money over? Or do you want to let it sit for 5 to 7 years, and then there'll be no more surrender charges. Then you can move the money. I'll post some links here on this once I finish, but that only you can make that decision on how you want to proceed. The right kind of advisor, as I mentioned earlier, you want to work with a fiduciary advisor. This individual must pledge to put your interests first. I'm going to go ahead and post a link with a resource on finding the right kind of advisor. We also have a fiduciary pledge that you can print out and have your advisor sign that can help protect you. Folks, if you're looking for help, especially transfer help, I would recommend the 403B Wise Facebook group. As of yesterday, we were over 13,200 members. And I will tell you, the number one question that we get almost on a daily basis is, how do I get out of Equitable? It is the company that is asked about the most. We actually have a resource, a written page we have available that is all about getting out of Equitable, and I will share you a link to that story. If you would like to learn more about the problems in the K-12 403B or share with colleagues to enlighten them, we highly recommend the short podcast series we had produced called Learned by Being Burned. It's available on all major podcast platforms, and from our homepage, you can link to it. In this podcast series, teachers tell the story of how they were burned, how they learned, and how they began to advocate and make changes. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach us at hello@403bwise.org. Please take advantage of our website and the resources we have available. And with that, we will take questions, and I will also start posting some links in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Fantastic. For the questions, either put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and ask them. So as you're loading those up, I see Tina. I'll read yours here in a moment. Like I said, we've got Dan can answer. We've got Scott, who we haven't heard from yet, but like I told you up front, is a CFP and is a professional who's much more equipped to answer these questions than I. That's for certain. The last qualifier I'll say before turning it over to the rest of the questions is, this is a nationwide problem. This is not a problem that's unique to the Scotia Palm Beach County. Our district is looking into it. That's about as much as I can tell you. But I think you can feel comfortable in knowing that there are people in our district who are aware of the problem and who are trying to come up with solutions to fix the problem. It's not easy. This is a large bureaucracy. It's not easy to make change. The insurance industry is heavily got a lot of influence in this space, and it's not easy to make change. So I just wanted to put that one qualifier out there. But Tina's question is, and this is assuming for Dan and Scott, it says, so have you rated Fidelity better because their comparable products are all lower fees, or because they have more products with lower fees?
Scott, I'll turn that over to you.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. So we have a criteria that we used. I'm not sure if maybe Dan, you can bring up that website if you can do that, but that's the primary criteria. So can you build, to be a green vendor, in this case, Green Plus, can you build a global index portfolio for less than 0.2% and less than $60 a year? And with Fidelity, it's $24 a year. There might be a compliance administration fee in there also, but $24 a year plus the underlying expense ratio of the funds. You can buy target date funds that are index based for 0.08%. And you can buy, some of their index funds are as low as, I think, like 0.015. It's like really, really low. So that's the criteria. If you want to see the criteria that we use for each of the green, yellow, and red lights, Dan has the website right here. We can post it into the comments. And if you hover over the info like Dan just did, it gives you a small synopsis, but the basics of what we use to place them into the different categories. Hope that answered your question.
Tina, did you have any follow-up to that, or did that answer the question?
Scott, we should point out that Fidelity has more expensive products available. Is it their advisor sold products, which can be more expensive?
They do. There are advisor sold products from Fidelity that can be expensive. So when we're referring to Fidelity here, we're referring to the 403B that they offer through just like their retail product direct through Fidelity. Also, they offer, like, when I say a lot, like a lot of mutual funds in their 403B product. You probably have access to like 150 different Fidelity funds, like the entire gamut of funds. We think you should limit yourself to the index funds or the index-based target date funds. I would not recommend the actively managed funds.
Good question, though.
Yeah, and I will add to, that's something, yeah, well, we didn't cover it, but it is certainly a good note, the difference between an actively managed fund and a passively managed fund, right? And an active is just where there's managers who are actively trading in and out of the fund. You pay for that. Their goal is to try to beat the market. There's plenty of research out there that shows they typically don't beat the market. Yeah, and passively is just, it follows some sort of index in which there is nobody trading in and out of it. It's just passively managed, and therefore you do not have to pay for managers to do that. It's typically much cheaper.
Yeah, and if you need any more evidence that an index fund is the way to go, the greatest investor of all time, Warren Buffett, he tells people that they should be investing in index funds. and he is the best track record of probably any actual manager in the history of the world. So if that should tell you something.
Yeah, I think it's also important to point out real quickly, just like the difference in the types of products that you may be investing in. You're either going to be in 403Bs, you either have an annuity contract with an insurance company, or you have a mutual fund custodial account. There's no in between. And typically, I talked about annuities a little bit when I was doing the pension, but that's a very different type of annuity than we're talking about here. So understand that a vast majority of you, if you have a 403B and it's with somebody outside of Fidelity, there's chances are high that it's some sort of annuity product. An annuity product is simply a contract that you sign with an insurance company. That are very complicated. If you want to get into it, Scott can get into, the difference between an equity index annuity and a variable annuity. We don't really need to right now. But so understand that that's one of the huge differences here too, is just the type of product you have. And then back to the question, what was the next question? Oh, so Veronica, yeah, and Dan kind of mentioned there, but Veronica said, I stopped contributing to AIG, which is now called Corebridge. And so you may see that name, and I don't want anyone to be confused, but if you see Corebridge, that was what was once AIG, one of the top insurance companies selling products in our 403B accounts, but got stuck. I haven't started contributing to it, and I'm confused how to transfer from AIG. Help. Yeah, Scott.
Well, I mean, you might actually be the best person to talk to about actually doing the exchange. So it's called an exchange when you move from one 403B vendor to another 403B vendor within your plan. That's called an exchange. Generally, you need paperwork from the company that you're moving from and the company you're moving to, as well as there's usually a document that you have to submit for the compliance administrator for your school district, which is TSA Consulting Group. Aaron might be able to help you with that paperwork. My suggestion, and maybe I didn't hear the whole question, but my suggestion is to first get your ongoing contributions set up at the right place. So let's let's say you want to move your money, you want to have your money eventually go to Fidelity, get your salary reduction agreement started. Well, first of all, open your account with Fidelity, then get your salary reduction agreement going there. Once the money is flowing out of your paycheck, when you have some time at a maybe it's a Thanksgiving break or a Christmas break, a spring break, a summer break, then it takes a little bit more time to make that move. So that would be the time that I would suggest that you start working on that, because it's not as simple as just getting money flowing into your 403b from your paycheck. And also a great resource, as Dan has mentioned several times, is the 403b Wise Facebook group. There are several people on there who have done exchanges in the past dozens and dozens of times, hundreds of times, and can provide some guidance there as well.
Yeah. And I'll add a few things to that. Yeah, it's I will say, Veronica, don't get discouraged. This is a common issue. They don't make it easy. That's an understatement. One of the keys, is Scott said it already, you have to continuously refer to it as a contract exchange. That is a very, I know, unique, strange term that you may not be used to using. It is frustrating. And the bottom line is this: there's no like a textbook way I can tell you to do it, because every vendor is going to have their own processes, and you have to follow the processes. But I will tell you this: there's 3 entities you have to communicate with. There is the vendor you're transferring money to. Now, Scott said it, that one's easy. You can simply go on to, and by the way, let me highlight this too. You do not need an advisor to open up an account. A lot of the salespeople will make it seem like you do, like you need them to open up a 403. That is not true. You can go into PeopleSoft on your own and look at the list of, it tells you the list of vendors, and then for Fidelity, and for Fidelity only, now for every other one, you're probably gonna need an advisor, but Fidelity gives you the plan code. And that's all you need, because the plan code links you to your employer. So all you need is that plan code. You can go in and it gives you the website, and you can open an account in like 3 minutes, okay? So that's step 1, is you gotta have an account open with them, right? And then step 2 is you've got to talk to the vendor you currently have money with, which in Veronica's case was Corebridge. You've got to talk to them, and you've just got to pick up the phone and call them and ask them, what is the process I need to do to perform a contract exchange? Be blunt with them. Please send me the paperwork. Now, the paperwork they send you may be time sensitive. It may be stamped with a special code on it that's just for you, so you have to use their paperwork. But that's fine. You can play their game. And then the third entity is the third party administrator, which we haven't even talked about that. In our district, it's called TSA Consulting Group /Omni. They're basically the one who maintains the accounts. They ensure that like the district is following IRS regulations and things like that. So once you have the necessary paperwork from the company you want to transfer from, which in your case is Corebridge, I would also call Fidelity. And sometimes Fidelity, by the way, does not make this easy either. They sometimes require their own paperwork that you have to fill out. So once you get those 2 paperwork signed off by the appropriate parties, then you go to TSA Consulting Group, and they allow you to do it online. I just shared a link of, I made like a generic overview several years ago. And once that link is, if you can access that link, you can see that there's a special link. It's called the ART that you have to go to for TSA Consulting Group to upload all of that. So Veronica, what's paperwork called? It's the contract exchange. You tell them you want to perform a contract exchange, and that's what it's called. Let's see.
And Veronica, I just put in the Fidelity plan code for Palm Beach County, and this is the link to open the account at Fidelity. Basically, you just click. You should be able to click this link, click Get Started, put in your plan code, and then start putting in all your information. That'll open your 403b at Fidelity. Hopefully.
Right, and then Tina says, is your vendor research published? If so, where? Before you answer that, let me just say something to that. These vendors are notoriously opaque with their information. Typically, the only time you can get a lot of fee information from them is if you open an account. That is also something that we're hoping to change in our district. We're in the process of believe it or not, our district does not know all this information right now. We do not know the exact fees that everybody's paying. I know California has a site that has all that, which I'm sure Scott and Dan are going to talk about. But I will tell you, for district specific, we're in the process of trying to get it all. But it's pretty similar nationwide. So Scott and Dan, you want to talk about what's done in California?
Yeah, I'll demo, Scott, if you want to.
Yeah, sure. So about almost 20 years ago, Dan and I were involved in legislation that created this 403B Compare. And it's a database in California. Any vendor that wants to offer their products in California has to disclose them thoroughly. Otherwise, they can't offer it, and they can't charge fees that are not disclosed. So most of the vendors that are present in other states, the products that they offer in general are the same products everywhere. Now, there are a few differences. For example, Equitable in your school district actually has a slightly lower what's called mortality and expense fee than elsewhere. But for the most part, the products are about the same. And so Dan is showing you Fidelity. You can click on Fidelity and go through. You can find the expenses there. But a lot of the information we find for these vendors comes directly from 403B Compare. We can search most vendors. If we can't, in our research, if we can't find it on Compare, we'll go directly to the source. And that source is easy for us. Since I do this all the time, it's easy for me to find what the fees are for a mutual fund, what the fees are for a variable annuity. I know where to go. I know where to look in a prospectus. So for example, what Dan is showing you is there's actually two parts in Compare. You actually have to add up the costs. You got to add up the mortality and expense fee. That's like the base fee of a variable annuity. And then you actually also have to go and find the investment options that you have and then add those expenses as well. So it can be a little difficult. But in terms of where we get our information, we get it direct from the source or from 403B Compare. When it comes to indexed annuities, we basically, the information's out there and we're able to find it either on 403B Compare or we find it directly at the source through the marketing materials they put out. Although that said, the amount of information that we would like to see from the equity indexed annuity companies is a lot, and they will not provide it. And that should tell you something.
Yeah, and the fee structure is not going to differ tremendously from state to state. There may be some slight nuance differences, but nothing drastic. We've seen that numerous times.
And I would also say this is kind of an ironic sales pitch that I've started to see over the last couple of years. You will get someone in who sounds just like Dan and I. Oh, you should focus on fees. There's too many fees, for example, in the mutual fund that you're in or in the variable annuity you're in. And you should think about indexes. But what they're actually trying to sell you are these indexed annuity products. And these indexed annuity products don't have any explicit fees, meaning fees that you could look at in a prospectus, because they make their money in a slightly different way. They make their money by investing your money, earning a higher rate of return than they pay out. And the difference between what they earn and what they pay you is how they make their money. It's called a spread. That's not an explicit fee that's ever disclosed anywhere. So they'll come in and say, oh, you don't want to have your money with Corebridge. They charge, 2% a year. You don't want to have your money there. It sounds just like Dan and I. But where they want to put your money is a place that's even worse than Corebridge. Has longer surrender periods, higher surrender charges, and technically the costs are even higher. You just can't see them. And all of this is perfectly legal right now, which is unfortunate.
If I could jump in real quick, Scott and I, this is one of the recent episodes from our Teach and Retire Rich podcast. And if any of you have student loans, if any of you are in the PSLF program or wanting to know more about it, highly recommend this podcast here. And I'm going to post it. It is a teacher turned fiduciary advisor from Baltimore who answers the 10 key student loan questions. And there's an upcoming deadline on December 31st. Scott, tell me if I have this right. Let's say you have 2 loans, one for undergrad, one for grad loans, and you've been paying on the undergraduate loans. Let's say you've made 70 payments, and the grad loans, 30 payments, you're allowed to combine those and it'll count as 70, Scott. Is that what it is?
I probably wouldn't get into the specifics because
Okay.
It even escapes me, Dan. It's so complicated. But
So listen to this.
if you have student loans, listen to this podcast.
This is just one of our best. And you can find Teach and Retire Rich on all the major platforms. You can get it directly from our homepage. I'll just go back there so you can see that. If you ever want to find it from there, you would just click here, and we always have the most recent one, and then you would just click all episodes. And we've interviewed Aaron at least once. I forget if it was more than once, but anyway, Aaron he was a great guest that we had on. But anyway, this one was from October 20th. We've done a bunch on student loans. If you were just to search our database, you would see that. But this gives you kind of a little sampling of the type of things topics we cover. Here's one about a couple that were able to get out of Equitable. Here's another student loan podcast from the summer.
Dan, you also mentioned that we don't get paid by any vendors, correct?
I did. Yeah,
Okay,
I did
great.
mention that. It's always good to bring that up again, though. And for those of you who are beginning to, get closer to retirement or think you might need to access the 403B, let me go back here. You'd go to our education section, and we have this resource here, accessing a 403B. And these are all the different circumstances where you're able to tap into your 403B. We have a podcast on this topic. We also have what we call on-demand learning modules. These are self-paced, no cost, a little bit deeper dive into the 403B, 457B, the basics of savings and investing. You can click there, just go through it at your pace. You can do it as many times as you want. We won't do this in December, but the beginning of every month, we just do 1 hour of Q&A, basically what's happening now. And you would simply just click here. Here's the registration. Go ahead and put your name, click register, and then you'll get a reminder the day of. And our next one is going to be in
Tomorrow.
July.
Oh, it's not tomorrow?
It's tomorrow and then July. Sorry,
Oh.
Scott. Yeah. I don't know if I published that one yet. No, I haven't done the January one yet, but the one tomorrow is available. And if you know teachers who don't work in your district, don't have someone like Aaron, don't get to attend these kind of workshops, we have these advocacy tools that you can share with them that they can use to advocate for plan improvement. You can download some of our slide decks that you can give the presentations to your colleagues to kind of build interest in helping reform the 403B. We have a savings calculator here that you can use to show the acute difference. Here's 2.3%. If you look at this situation here, look how much money goes towards fees, right? you just simply change this down to like 0.2. Look at the difference. Look how much more money you're keeping here with fees, without fees, $1.4 million. Again, if you're inequitable.
We're not seeing what you're seeing, Dan.
Oh, you know why I'm not sharing? That's why. Let me share here. Oh, I see what it did. It went to a new window. Okay, let me just change my share. There it is. Okay, so in this scenario here, under these circumstances, the total accumulation is $909,000. Would have been 1.5 million without the fees, but with the fees, it's 909. If you invest in the green vendor, look how much more of your money you're keeping, 1.45 million, almost the same amount with the fees. So if anyone's asking and saying, wait, do fees really make a difference? I recommend this calculator. I'll put it in the chat, but it's also something you can access from our advocacy page.
Great. So if you have anything else you can think of, we're at 2:04 now. Again, you can either raise your hand and mute or put it in the chat. I will just say a few lasting things, and then if nobody else has any other questions, we'll call it a day. And you can hopefully this is the end of your PD day today, and you can rest and relax after this. I sure hope. I'm going to put a link in here too. There's a great when we do this so we do a similar presentations in April during Financial Literacy Month. Dan and Scott have joined in the past. We also often have the SEC join us, which is the Security and Exchange Commission from the government. They have released this saving and investing guide for teachers, in which they say most of the same things that were just said here in these 2 hours today. The SEC themselves have even released a warning about variable annuities and the danger of investing in them. So you can read that. Again, you can read that saving and investing guide. But ultimately, what I'll tell you is the purpose of us doing these is to hopefully, before you make any large financial decision, is just that you become educated on it. The one thing I'm always hopeful for is that you go into any large, these are financial decisions that could make a difference in how comfortable your retirement might be. These are incredibly important decisions that you're making. So you should go into those decisions with a full picture in front of you of what's available and what your options are. And that's ultimately what our goal is. So, is for you not to make a decision based on something Aaron said today, based on something Dan or Scott said today, or based on something that, a person you saw for 15 minutes in a staff lounge with a sandwich said either. So that's hopefully the goal of what you get out of this is just, you're here, you're obviously interested in this topic, you're obviously interested in learning more. I will say, keep seeking out more information, try to get it from reputable sources. Whenever we do any sort of presentations, we always make sure, and this is the same in the classroom, because we have to do this with our students for the classroom, is that it's coming from either a nonprofit, a educational institution, or a government institution, right? Somebody where there is no profit motive involved. So there's not any compromise information. And that's always going to be the goal. And that's what I would always suggest, that where people seek out more, if they're looking for more education, that's where they seek out more information from, or more education from. So with that being said, I do not see any more questions coming in. Just a bunch of thank yous. So again, thank you everybody for joining. A huge thank you for Dan and Scott. They advocate and educate around the entire country. This is at least the 10th time they've given a presentation for our district staff, which is amazing. So we couldn't be thankful enough that they take time out of their incredibly busy days to join us. And thank you, Ashley. Ashley helped set this up with our Suncoast High School staff. And I know we had other staff also join in as well with us. So thank you to the others who were also able to join in. So with that being said, we'll call the session. I'll be around for another few minutes if anyone really wants to stick around and ask any other questions. But otherwise, my email is just aaron.standish@palmbeachschools.org. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer. So appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
See you, Aaron.